Beneath the pyramids of Teotihuacan, scientists opened a tunnel that had been sealed for 1,800 years, and what they found inside was so strange that people across the world started calling it an alien discovery: liquid metal on the floor, walls that glowed in the dark. A false sky, built underground. And the evidence coming out of this site right now is forcing archaeologists to rewrite the history of all of America, not because of aliens, but because of something far harder to believe. Because here is the part almost nobody knows. This story did not end in 2003 when the tunnel was found. It is still unfolding, right now. In May of 2026, a team from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History was clearing ground for a new passenger railway between Mexico City and Querétaro. Routine work. Salvage archaeology, the kind of dig that usually produces broken pottery and a short report. Then the ground opened. Led by archaeologist Victor Heredia Guillen, the team uncovered 5 shaft tombs cut into the earth near Ignacio Zaragoza, in the Tula region. And inside one of them, 8 people, adults, and children, some only 8 to 11 years old, curled in the fetal position, arranged with care. Around them, 47 miniature ceramic vessels, tiny, deliberate, placed by hand. These were Teotihuacan people, 90 kilometers from the city itself, which means the reach of this civilization was wider than the maps ever showed. And it raises the question that has haunted this place for a century. Who were they? Because we do not know. We do not know what they called themselves. We do not know what language they spoke. We do not know the name of a single one of their kings. The word Teotihuacan is not even their word. It is Aztec, and the Aztecs arrived here centuries after the city was already dead. They walked into a landscape of collapsed pyramids and abandoned avenues, and they were so overwhelmed by what they saw that they decided no human hand could have built it. They called it the place where the gods were born. That was their explanation. Gods. Ours became aliens. But hold that thought, because the truth is stranger than both. At its height, around 400 years after Christ, this city held somewhere between 125,000 and 200,000 people. It was one of the largest cities on the entire planet at the time, larger than most of Rome's rivals. And it was built on a grid, a deliberate, engineered grid, rotated 15.5 degrees east of north. Every street, every temple, every wall, tilted to the same angle. Nobody could explain why. And then came the rain. October 2003. Days of heavy storms had soaked the Valley of Mexico. An archaeologist named Sergio Gomez Chavez arrived at work that morning and was told something had happened at the foot of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. The ground had collapsed. A hole, barely 80 centimeters wide, right at the base of the pyramid, a place where thousands of tourists had walked, every single day, for decades. Nobody had any idea what was beneath their feet. Gomez had himself lowered in on a rope. He later described the feeling of going down into that darkness, the fear rising in him, the sense of losing control. And when his feet touched bottom, he was not in a natural cave. He was standing in a tunnel. A man-made tunnel, and it had been blocked, deliberately, with enormous stones. Someone had sealed this place, on purpose, and then buried the entrance so completely that it stayed hidden for 18 centuries. The obvious question, what were they hiding? It would take 6 years just to get permission to dig. Ground-penetrating radar mapped what lay ahead, and the results were staggering. The tunnel ran roughly 103 meters, the length of a football field, straight toward a point directly beneath the center of the pyramid. 14 to 18 meters down, and at the end of it, chambers. But there was a problem. Nobody knew if the tunnel would hold. The ceiling could come down. The air could be toxic. So they did not send a person. They sent a machine. The first robot was called Tlaloc, named for the rain god. It crawled into the dark in 2010 and sent back the first images anyone had seen of that space in 1,800 years. Then came its successor, Tlaloc II, 35 kilograms, 45 centimeters tall. Built with input from an engineer who had helped design the robot used to probe the Great Pyramid in Egypt, it carried a rover, an infrared scanner that mapped everything within a 5-meter radius, and a small drone that could fly ahead into spaces too tight for the machine itself. In April of 2013, it went in. Archaeologists expected the tunnel to end in a single chamber. It found 3. And then the cameras picked up something that made the entire team go silent. Scattered across the floor of the chambers, hundreds of spheres, perfectly round, ranging from about 4 centimeters to 12, and in the infrared light they looked metallic, like they had been machined. The press called them disco balls, the internet called them something else entirely. Analysis showed each sphere has a core of clay and adobe, coated in jarosite, an amber mineral that forms when pyrite oxidizes over centuries. Pyrite, fool's gold. Which means that 1800 years ago, when they were placed there, they did not look like dull stone. They gleamed like metal. Inazone researchers called it an unprecedented discovery, and to this day, nobody knows what they mean. But that was not the strangest thing in the tunnel. Because when Gomez finally walked those chambers himself and turned off the lights, the walls came alive. The Teotihuacanos had ground magnetite, pyrite, and hematite into powder, and coated the ceiling and walls of the entire chamber with it. In firelight, that dust does something extraordinary. It scatters. It glitters. It turns solid rock into a field of stars. 40 feet underground, they built a sky. Stop and think about what that required. Not just the vision, but the labor. Roughly 1,000 tons of earth were hauled out of that tunnel by hand, and they did all of it to be sealed shut forever. Then, in April of 2015, Gomez announced something that stopped the archaeological world cold. In a chamber at the end of the tunnel, his team had found large quantities of liquid mercury. Mercury does not sit in the ground waiting to be scooped up. To get liquid mercury, you have to take cinnabar, mercury sulfide, and heat it until the metal separates out. It is a difficult process. It is a toxic process. The vapor attacks the nervous system, tremors, vision loss, paralysis. They knew how to do it anyway. And mercury is almost unheard of in this part of the world. A review published in Frontiers in Environmental Science in 2022 counted only around 7 occurrences of liquid mercury across all of Mesoamerica. Copan, in Honduras, held more than 6 kilograms. At Teotihuacan, it had never been found before, not once. So why here? The leading interpretation is this: they were not storing a chemical, they were building a landscape. At the end of the tunnel, researchers found miniature mountains, and between them, pools of mercury, standing in for lakes and rivers, a shimmering, reflective silver underworld in miniature beneath the temple, the starry ceiling above, the mercury rivers below. They were not digging a tunnel. They were constructing the entrance to another world. And Gomez believed he knew what waited at the end of it. For years, every archaeologist following this dig held the same hope. Mercury at Maya sites had sometimes been found near royal burials. The offerings kept getting richer the deeper they went. More than 100,000 objects were eventually catalogued from that tunnel. Jade carried from the Motagua Valley in Guatemala, shells from the Caribbean and the Pacific, rubber balls, jaguar remains, obsidian, amber, beetle wings, and corn, still recognizable after 1,800 years. In the final chamber, they found 4 greenstone statues, about 60 centimeters tall, 2 of them standing upright, facing the far wall, like witnesses, waiting. And then, nothing. No sarcophagus, no royal burial, no king. Which brings us to the real mystery of this city, the one that has never been solved. In more than a century of excavation at Teotihuacan, archaeologists have never found a ruler's tomb. They have never found a portrait of a king. There is no list of dynasties. No named ruler, no deciphered writing. Compare that to the Maya, who carved their kings onto stone monuments across an entire peninsula, naming fathers and sons and conquests in obsessive detail. Teotihuacan built one of the largest cities on Earth, and left behind no rulers at all. Some researchers like Saburo Sugiyama argue a powerful individual must have ruled here and we simply have not found him yet. Others, like Linda Manzanilla, argue something far more radical, that Teotihuacan was governed collectively, a council. Competing elite factions, a city that deliberately erased the individual. If that is true, it would make this place a genuine anomaly in the ancient world. And this is exactly where the alien theories rushed in. No kings, impossible geometry, mercury, glowing walls. So let's take those claims seriously and test them. The first is the mica. Sheets of it, about 6 centimeters thick, were found under a floor here in 1942. For decades, popular writers claimed the mica could only have come from Brazil, 3,000 kilometers away, and that it was used for radiation shielding, or as a capacitor. Then archaeometry answered. X-ray diffraction, electron microscopy, and neutron activation analysis on the mica from the Viking group and the Xala Palace, where about 37 kilograms of it were recovered. Matched it to sources in the valleys of Oaxaca, not Brazil. And the composition proved nearly identical to mica from Monte Alban, suggesting a direct elite trade alliance. The second claim is the skulls. Elongated crania, found across Mesoamerica, presented online as proof of non-human beings. The science here is settled and well documented. It is artificial cranial modification, infant skulls bound with boards or cloth while still soft. A cultural practice recorded worldwide. Every skull tested is fully human. And the third is the grid, that 15.5-degree tilt. In 2000, Ivan Spreich published an analysis in Latin American antiquity showing the city contains two families of alignments, skewed roughly 15.5 and 16.5 degrees, and that these were deliberate and astronomically functional. The axis of the Pyramid of the Sun marks sunset on August 13th and April 30th. Count the days between them. 260. The exact length of the Mesoamerican sacred calendar. They did not tilt their city by accident. They tilted an entire metropolis to lock it onto the sky. No aliens required, just astronomers. But here is the discovery that genuinely changes the history of the Americas. On a date we can read precisely, the 16th of January 378, a figure named Sihaj Kach, meaning fire is born, arrived at the Maya city of Tikal, more than 1,000 kilometers away. On that same day, Tikal's king died. The following year, a new ruler was installed. He was not the old king's son, he was the son of a figure called Spear-thrower Owl, who the epigrapher David Stewart argues was a ruler of Teotihuacan itself. Stewart published a full book on this case in 2025. A foreign power had reached across Mesoamerica and replaced a dynasty. And then LiDAR confirmed it. In 2021, Thomas Garrison, Edwin Roman Ramirez, and Stephen Houston published in Antiquity that laser scanning had revealed something buried in the jungle inside Tikal itself, a scaled-down replica of Teotihuacan's own ceremonial complex. About 30% smaller, aligned to that same 15.5 degrees, built with mud plaster instead of Maya limestone. Excavation there recovered green Pachuca obsidian and Teotihuacan-style dart points, a burial, animal bone. Charcoal, suggesting burning. Houston described it not as trade, but as occupation, or surveillance. They did not just influence the Maya world, they installed themselves inside it. And the evidence keeps coming. In October of 2025, a team published in Antiquity the results of a LiDAR and field survey on Cerro Patlachique, overlooking the valley. 40 carved stone monuments, 34 of them never published before. 13 carry dates from that same 260-day calendar. A mountaintop shrine active for 400 years, and beneath the Pyramid of the Moon, geophysical scanning has already located another tunnel, 10 meters down, leading to a cavity 15 meters across. Nobody has been inside it. It is still sealed. Around the year 550, the heart of this city burned, and the pattern of the destruction is what makes it chilling. The fire was targeted temples, palaces, elite structures. The ordinary neighborhoods were largely spared. Combined with paleoclimate evidence for prolonged drought, the leading interpretation is that Teotihuacan was not destroyed by invaders. It was destroyed by its own people. They tore down their gods, walked away, and left no name behind. There were no aliens under the pyramid. What was down there was a civilization that mined poison to build a river of silver, ground stone into starlight to make a sky underground, tilted an entire city to match the calendar, and reached across a continent to seat a king on a foreign throne. And we still cannot tell you the name of a single person who did it. The tunnel under the Pyramid of the Moon has not been opened yet. Whatever is down there has been waiting for 1,800 years. If you want to see what they find when it finally is, you know what to do.